Many believe the final corner of a Formula One season is the most dangerous. They are wrong. The most brutal, career-ending phase of any F1 event is the first 15 seconds off the grid. This video ranks the 10 most insane opening lap accidents in the sport's history, showcasing chaos that permanently changed F1's safety protocols. Viewers will witness a championship decided by a single high-speed spin at Monza, and see the astonishing footage of a car that split in half and erupted in a fireball, prompting an investigation into what should have been a fatality. Let's kick things off at Monza, September 2nd, 2018, the 14th round of what had become a desperate championship fight. Lewis Hamilton held a 17-point lead over Sebastian Vettel, but Ferrari was on home soil and hungry for redemption. Kimi Raikkonen grabbed pole position with the fastest qualifying lap in F1 history, 263.588 km/h average speed.
Kimi Raikkonen on pole in Monza and on pole in Formula One for the first time since Monaco last season.
But it was the battle behind him that would define the championship. Lights out, and Hamilton made his move on Vettel approaching the second chicane. Contact made Vettel spin like a washing machine.
Hamilton and Vettel has been spun round! Disaster for Sebastian Vettel at the start of this race!
His championship hopes scattering across the Italian tarmac. The German dropped to the back while Hamilton inherited the lead. Vettel's radio crackled with frustration.
That was silly, where did he want to go?
Obvious. Car damage.
But the stewards saw it differently. Racing incident, no penalty. Hamilton would eventually pass Raikkonen, with 9 laps remaining to take the victory, while Vettel fought back to a hard-earned 4th place, behind Valtteri Bottas in 3rd. Max Verstappen, who had been involved in a separate incident forcing Bottas off track, was penalised 5 seconds and classified 5th. But the most obscure piece of history was made further down the field. The disqualification of Romain Grosjean from 6th place promoted Williams driver Sergei Sirotkin to 10th, securing his only career point. This result meant that for the first time ever, every driver who started and finished every race in the 2018 season scored at least 1 championship point. That contact at the chicane effectively ended Vettel's title hopes. Sometimes championships die not with a bang, but with a spin. Fast forward to Silverstone, July 18th, 2021. The 10th round of the most intense championship battle in a decade. Max Verstappen led Lewis Hamilton by 32 points, and the Dutchman had just won the inaugural sprint qualifying to claim pole position. The stage was set for war at Hamilton's home circuit, with 140,000 British fans creating a cauldron of noise. Both drivers knew this was a pivotal moment in their title fight. The start was clean, but the battle was just beginning. Side by side through multiple corners, neither giving an inch. Then came one of the fastest corners in F1 at 290 km/h, 180 mph. Hamilton went for the inside line. Verstappen held his ground on the outside. Contact was inevitable. The Red Bull snapped sideways and hit the tyre wall at the terrifyingly fast Copse corner with 51 G of force, enough to knock most people unconscious.
Hamilton's going to try again, this time on the inside, a continent touch! Verstappen is out of the race and that's a big crash into Copse!
Verstappen was rushed to the hospital while Hamilton received a 10-second penalty and somehow still won the race. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner was furious. That's what I'm most angry about. We are lucky that there wasn't someone seriously hurt. The damage, £1.3 million and a championship fight that turned toxic overnight. Verstappen called Hamilton's celebrations disrespectful and unsportsmanlike. Hamilton defended his move as hard racing. The race director later clarified that the steward's penalty decision didn't take the collision's severe consequences into account. The gloves were off, and they would stay off for the rest of the season. November 25th, 2012. The 20th and final round of the season at Interlagos, and Sebastian Vettel held a knife-edge 13-point lead over Fernando Alonso. All the German needed was to finish 4th, even if Alonso won. The pressure was suffocating. Light rain had fallen just before the start, making the track treacherous. Vettel got away poorly, immediately dropping from 4th to 7th. 15 seconds later, he was facing the wrong way with a damaged car. Bruno Senna, desperate for points, made contact with Vettel at turn 4.
It's a Red Bull, Sebastian Vettel in the middle of the track! It's the worst possible scenario!
The championship leader spun like a top, dropping from 7th to 22nd, with his left side pod hanging off like a broken wing, but still able to continue. Alonso, watching from his Ferrari, must have thought the title was his. especially with teammate Massa actively helping him move up the order. But champions don't stay down. What followed was one of the greatest comeback drives in F1 history. Vettel carved through the field like a man possessed, battling rain and the chaotic field, which at one point saw Nico Hülkenberg's Force India leading the race. The drama continued in the pits. Because Vettel's radio had failed, his pit crew wasn't ready, causing a critical delay. His car damaged, the rain getting heavier, Vettel finally took 6th position from Michael Schumacher, becoming the sport's youngest triple world champion. He crossed the line to win his 3rd consecutive title by only 3 points. The race finished behind the safety car after Paul di Resta crashed on the final straight. Vettel later called it his toughest race ever. The media called it a roller coaster. The truth? It was the moment a good driver became a great champion. But for every championship triumph on a first lap, there is a moment of pure, terrifying luck. September 2nd, 2012. The 12th round of the season at Spa-Francorchamps, and Fernando Alonso led the championship by 40 points. The Spaniard was cruising toward his 3rd title, but Romain Grosjean had other plans. Jenson Button started on pole, but the danger lurked just behind him. Championship rival Fernando Alonso was starting 6th with Lewis Hamilton in 8th. Crucially, the man who would launch the chaos, Romain Grosjean, was lined up directly beside Hamilton in 9th place. Lights out, and Grosjean made a move that nearly killed a man. Squeezing Lewis Hamilton at La Source, Grosjean lost control and went airborne. His Lotus flew directly over Fernando Alonso's Ferrari cockpit, missing the Spaniard's head by inches, maybe less.
Oh dear, Romain Grosjean and Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton all coming to grief at La Source.
The crash instantly eliminated Fernando Alonso, but the danger was far greater than the DNF suggested. Romain Grosjean, the driver at fault, immediately accepted the blame, stating, "I misjudged the gap. It was a small mistake, but a big incident." He expressed remorse and apologized for the wreck, admitting the sanction was difficult but fair. The true horror of his mistake, however, was realized in the terrifying image of Alonso's car flying inches above his helmet. This horrifying near miss became the defining moment that accelerated the adoption of the Halo cockpit protection device. 4 cars eliminated instantly. Grosjean was banned for 1 race and fined €50,000. The direct result of that terrifying near miss materialized 6 years later, when the Halo device became mandatory, the same device that would later save Grosjean's own life. Pastor Maldonado, who had jumped the start, was handed 2 5-place grid penalties for the next race. Button went on to win from pole, but nobody was talking about the victory. They were talking about the miracle that Alonso was still alive. March 3rd, 2002. The season opener at Albert Park, and Ferrari looked unstoppable. Rubens Barrichello claimed pole position, with teammate Michael Schumacher alongside him on the front row. The Brazilian was heavily fueled and confident. Ralf Schumacher, starting 3rd in his Williams, was hungry for an early season statement. The stage was set for a classic Melbourne thriller. Instead, we got a physics lesson in what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Barrichello braked early into turn 2 at Brabham, a perfectly legal defensive move. Ralf, doing 240 km per hour, 150 miles per hour, in his Williams and had nowhere to go. The impact launched him clean over the Ferrari, like he was attempting a world record long jump. The carnage was immediate and devastating. 8 cars eliminated in seconds, including both Sauber drivers Felipe Massa and Nick Heidfeld, Renault's Jenson Button and Bar's Olivier Panis. Half the field gone before they completed a single racing lap. Martin Brundle, commentating for ITV, delivered one of the greatest lines in F1 history. "It's like everybody's shunting in sympathy." Michael Schumacher, who avoided the chaos by driving through the grass, went on to win his 54th career victory. Despite all the finger-pointing, the stewards officially ruled the crash a racing incident, placing the blame on neither driver. But the real story was survival. Only 8 cars finished the race. This unprecedented chaos delivered an instant legend. Mark Webber finished 5th in the Tiny Minardi team, securing their first points in 3 years. The result was so shocking it was compared to the Stephen Bradbury Olympic miracle. In the early 2000s, F1 was still learning that spectacular doesn't always mean safe. August 1st, 2021. The 11th round of the season at the Hungaroring, and Max Verstappen's championship lead had been cut to just 8 points after his crash with Hamilton at Silverstone 2 weeks earlier. Lewis Hamilton claimed pole position, with teammate Valtteri Bottas alongside him. Verstappen started third, knowing he needed damage limitation on a track where overtaking is nearly impossible. Light rain before the start made tyre choice crucial. Most drivers chose intermediates, but the track was drying fast. Bottas, starting second, had one job: don't mess this up for Hamilton. And he messed it up spectacularly. Braking too late into turn 1, Bottas collected Lando Norris, who hit Verstappen, who collected Sergio Perez.
Lando Norris touched, and into each other goes Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez.
Lance Stroll, also braking too late, hit Charles Leclerc and forced Daniel Ricciardo to spin. 5 cars eliminated, 2 more severely damaged. The restart was surreal. Hamilton was the only driver who lined up on the grid. Everyone else had pitted for dry tyres during the red flag. 1 car versus 19, like a bizarre F1 experiment. But the chaos wasn't over yet. As cars flooded the pit lane during the red flag period, an unsafe release from Alfa Romeo sent Kimi Raikkonen straight into the side of Nikita Mazepin, taking the Haas driver out of the race entirely. For causing the second incident of the day, Raikkonen was later handed a 10-second time penalty. Esteban Ocon inherited the lead and won his first F1 race for Alpine. The victory was secured when teammate Fernando Alonso delivered a masterful 12-lap defensive drive, holding up a charging Hamilton who eventually fought back to second. Verstappen, with massive damage, limped home 9th. After the race, second-place Sebastian Vettel was disqualified for a fuel infringement, promoting Hamilton to second and ensuring Mercedes took the lead in the Constructors' Championship. Bottas and Stroll were each handed 5-place grid penalties for the next race. The championship fight was back on, and the midfield saw a miracle, with Williams scoring their first points since 2018. July 14th, 1973. The 9th round of the season at Silverstone's original unforgiving layout. No chicanes, no runoff areas, just pure speed and concrete barriers waiting to bite. Ronnie Peterson claimed pole position for Lotus, but Jackie Stewart was the man to beat, starting 4th and hunting his 3rd world championship. The Scot had already won 3 races that season and looked unstoppable. 29 cars lined up in rows of 3, the most cars ever to start an F1 race. The field was packed tighter than a London tube at rush hour. Stewart made a brilliant start, passing Peterson for the lead at Beckett's. Behind them, Jody Scheckter was having the drive of his life in his McLaren, running 4th and looking for his first podium. Then came Woodcote Corner, a flat-out 274 km/h, 170 mph, sweeper with nowhere to hide. Scheckter lost control, spun across the track, and ricocheted off the pit wall back into the racing line just as the field arrived at full speed. 9 cars eliminated in a chain reaction of twisted metal and shattered dreams. Remarkably, top contenders like Jackie Stewart, Ronnie Peterson, and Carlos Reutemann, along with Denny Hume and James Hunt, had slipped through the chaos moments before. It would stand as F1's biggest race start crash until 1998. Andrea de Adamic was trapped in his Brabham with a broken ankle that would end his career. It took 30 minutes to extract him, another hour to clear the wreckage. The race restarted with just 19 cars from the original 29. The instigator, Jody Scheckter, was barred from the restart by his own team. Reigning world champion Emerson Fittipaldi labelled the rookie a menace. And the driver backlash was so fierce it nearly got Scheckter banned from the sport. On the restart, Jackie Stewart charged back into the fight, but on lap 6, he lost control trying to take the lead, spinning off the track and falling a full lap down to finish 10th. The day of disaster had claimed even the champion. The crash was so devastating that Silverstone added the Woodcote chicane before the 1975 race, a safety modification that remains today. Peter Revson won for McLaren, but the real story was survival in an era when safety was still an afterthought. September 17th, 2017. The 14th round of the season under the lights of Marina Bay, and Lewis Hamilton held a precarious 3-point championship lead over Sebastian Vettel. Vettel claimed pole position with a stunning lap of 1 minute 39.491 seconds, but the wet conditions made everything unpredictable. Max Verstappen started second, hungry to spoil the championship party. Kimi Raikkonen, Vettel's teammate, was 4th and ready to play the supporting role. This was F1's first ever night race in wet conditions, a recipe for chaos. The start was clean for exactly 5 seconds. Then, physics and poor judgment collided at 200 km/h, 124 mph. Verstappen got a better launch than Vettel and moved to the inside. Raikkonen, unsighted in the spray, squeezed from the outside. Verstappen was sandwiched between both Ferraris with nowhere to go. His tyres touched Raikkonen's car, sending the fin into his teammate's side pod. The carom was catastrophic. Raikkonen then hit Verstappen again, sending the Red Bull into Fernando Alonso's car.
And he's crashed with Verstappen, he's hit Vettel as well. Raikkonen is out before the first corner and he's gone into the Red Bull there as well.
All four were eliminated in the chain reaction. For the first time ever, both Ferrari cars were eliminated during an F1 opening lap. Vettel's points lead evaporated in a cloud of carbon fiber and recriminations. Hamilton, starting fifth, inherited the lead and never looked back. Despite two later safety car periods caused by mid-race crashes, he would extend his championship advantage to 28 points and eventually win the title by 46 points. Many trace his victory back to those 5 seconds of chaos in Singapore. The blame game was immediate. Verstappen was furious, saying he couldn't get out of that sandwich because his rear tyres were wider than his fronts. Vettel, who initiated the squeeze, simply told his team over the radio, "Sorry, I'm really sorry." The stewards investigated the historic carnage and ruled it a racing incident. The only fine was paid in wreckage and retirement. August 30th, 1998. The 13th round of the season at Spa-Francorchamps. Mika Häkkinen led the championship by 7 points over Michael Schumacher, and Häkkinen had claimed pole position. But the torrential rain made everything a lottery, and the organisers chose to start the race without a safety car. Visibility was measured in hope rather than meters. David Coulthard, starting second, knew the conditions were treacherous. What he didn't know was that he was about to trigger the most expensive single moment the sport had ever seen. Coming out of La Source hairpin, Coulthard lost control. His McLaren rebounded directly into the racing line, just as the rest of the field arrived, blind and at full speed. 12 cars were damaged in the single, unsighted wall of destruction on lap 1, eliminating more than half the grid.
Oh, this is terrible. This is quite appalling. This is the worst start for a Grand Prix that I have ever seen in the whole of my life.
Eddie Irvine, Alexander Wurz, Rubens Barrichello, Johnny Herbert, Olivier Panis, Jarno Trulli, Mika Salo, Pedro Diniz, Toranosuke Takagi, Riccardo Rosset, and Shinji Nakano all became victims of the initial chaos. And though Jos Verstappen managed to limp his Stewart back to the pits, the damage was terminal, ending his race as well. The material cost of the accident was the only immediate consequence. Because the crash happened before the end of the second lap, race rules dictated that the first start was invalidated, meaning the regulations allowed all drivers to restart. This was an official do-over. However, the scene was catastrophic. Rubens Barrichello, Olivier Panis, Mika Salo, and Riccardo Rosset could not take the second start. Listed officially as did not start, DNS, in the final results, as their teams lacked the spare parts or spare cars needed. It took nearly an hour after the initial chaos for the remaining 18 cars to line up on the grid. The sheer scale of the incident was staggering. The financial damage was estimated at over $10 million in 1998 money, equivalent to roughly $20 million today. Teams were counting broken parts like casualties of war. The initial 22-car grid was decimated, with only 18 cars ultimately able to take the second start. However, the bad luck was far from finished. On the very first lap of the restart, Coulthard was immediately involved in another collision, taking out Alexander Wurz and joining the race in last place. The race's defining moment, however, came midway through. Championship leader Michael Schumacher, who was leading by nearly 40 seconds over Hill, came up to lap David Coulthard. With visibility near zero in the heavy spray, Coulthard attempted to let Schumacher pass by, lifting off. But crucially, he did not move off the racing line. Schumacher, unsighted, slammed straight into the back of the McLaren, tearing off his own front right wheel and ending his race.
Oh, God! Michael Schumacher hits David Coulthard and is out!
A furious Schumacher limped back to the pits, where he immediately stormed down to the McLaren garage to confront Coulthard.
He's David Coulthard. He's going to have it out with David Coulthard.
Unbelievable altercation, as you say. Jean touched there. He's dragged his driver away. Michael is absolutely furious.
The confrontation became instantly infamous. Schumacher accused the Scot of trying to kill me, with many believing Coulthard had deliberately caused the crash to help his teammate Mika Häkkinen. With both Schumacher and Häkkinen out, the path was clear. Damon Hill won for Jordan, their first ever F1 victory. The post-race drama continued outside the garages. The celebration was confusing when the British anthem was mistakenly played instead of the Irish, and Schumacher, looking to settle scores in the driver market, angrily confronted team owner Eddie Jordan and bought out his brother Ralph's contract for £2 million to secure his move to Williams. The biggest shock of all came years later. In 2003, David Coulthard finally admitted fault for both crashes. He confessed the massive opening pileup was his fault, saying he just dropped a wheel onto the metal grille, and admitted he endangered Schumacher's life by lifting on the racing line during their mid-race collision. This crash proved that in F1, the difference between spectacular and tragic is often just luck and lightning-fast reflexes, and sometimes the true cost and blame of the turmoil take years to emerge. Our final race comes on November 29th, 2020. The 15th round of the season at Bahrain International Circuit, and Lewis Hamilton had already clinched his 7th World Championship.
Lewis Hamilton wins the Turkish Grand Prix and is a 7-time champion of the world.
The pressure was off, the racing should have been clean. Hamilton claimed pole position, but all eyes were on Romain Grosjean starting 19th in his Haas. The Frenchman was in his final season, looking to end his F1 career on a high note. Instead, he nearly ended it in the most horrific way imaginable. Lap 1, turn 3. Grosjean clipped Daniil Kvyat's AlphaTauri and lost control at 192 km per hour, 119 miles per hour. His Haas hit the barrier with 67 G of force, enough to kill most people instantly.
And a big fire there as they exited out of turn 3, and that looks very nasty indeed, and unsurprisingly, that is a red flag.
But the impact was just the beginning of the nightmare. The car split in half like it had been hit by a giant axe. The front section, with Grosjean trapped inside, wedged itself into the barrier and immediately erupted into a massive fireball. The fuel tank's inspection hatch was ripped off, dumping gallons of fuel onto the flames. For 28 seconds, an eternity in a burning race car, there was no sign of life. The world watched in horror as the flames consumed what should have been Grosjean's tomb. Then, like something from a movie, a figure emerged from the inferno. Romain Grosjean, walking away from what should have been his funeral pyre with nothing more than second-degree burns on his hands. The halo device, the titanium bar that Grosjean had once criticized as ugly, had absorbed the impact that would have crushed his skull. The same safety innovation born from his own near miss with Alonso 8 years earlier had now saved his life. Medical car driver Alan van der Merwe and Dr. Ian Roberts reached the scene as fast as they could, but Grosjean had already extracted himself. His helmet had prevented smoke inhalation, his race suit had protected most of his body, but his hands, exposed at the gaps between gloves and sleeves, bore the scars of those 28 seconds in hell. The race was suspended for 80 minutes while everyone processed what they just witnessed. Drivers were shaken in their cockpits. Team principals stood speechless. The world had just watched a man survive the unsurvivable. Hamilton went on to win the race, but nobody cared about the result. The only thing that mattered was the miracle. Grosjean, speaking from his hospital bed, delivered the line that defined modern F1 safety. The halo is the greatest thing that we brought to Formula One, and without it, I wouldn't be able to speak to you today. Ross Brawn, F1's managing director, credited the halo with saving Grosjean's life. The marshals, Dr. Roberts and van der Merwe, were awarded the prestigious President's Medal for their bravery by Formula One's governing body. And Grosjean? He attended the next race to thank the people who saved his life. The crash became his resurrection. It was a reminder that the line between triumph and tragedy is measured in millimeters, milliseconds, and the miracle of modern F1 safety. From championship heartbreak to literal resurrection, these 10 crashes prove that in Formula One, the first lap isn't just racing, it's survival. Every time those lights go out, drivers aren't just fighting for position. They're dancing with physics, fate, and sometimes death itself. If watching these moments of pure chaos got your adrenaline pumping, smash that like button, drop a comment about which crash left you speechless, and subscribe. Because in F1, just like these first laps, you never know when the next moment of madness is coming.